Shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Hey Guang, Spirit of the Law here. In this unit deep dive, we're going to talk about the Three Kingdoms alternative to the Knight, and whether they're better than Knights, worse, or if it depends on which of the Three Kingdoms civs we're talking about. To start with a general overview, Hei Guang are very similar in cost to the Knight line, at just 5 more food and 10 less gold each, while being produced in nearly an identical amount of time. For a sense of the differences here, to keep up 2 stable production, you need 2 more farmers for Hei Guang and 1 less gold miner. Considering food is actually harder to generate than gold in the mid-game, it's pretty much a wash early on, though with an important edge in gold efficiency by the late game in 1v1s. Stats-wise, they begin to differ in some more dramatic ways. First off, without any upgrades, notice Hei Guang have 40 less HP than a Knight, though these are far from a reskin, but then make up for that lower HP with 1 more attack, 2 more melee, and 1 more pierce armor. That's a lot of HP to give up, but 1 or 2 extra armor can sometimes be surprisingly impactful, and other times almost useless depending on what you're up against. So we'll check out some different situations where this is and is not a good trade-off. At least initially though, it actually seems pretty fair, as the 2 units require the exact same 14 hits against each other if you have all Castle Age upgrades, which I have to think was done intentionally to make them at least somewhat balanced head to head. Hei Guang are also nearly identical to a Knight in terms of bonus damage, with nothing extra in Castle Age, and also take anti-cavalry but not anti-unique unit bonus damage from Samurai, just like a Knight. The 2 aren't exactly the same though, as Hei Guang somewhat unexpectedly pick up a +1 bonus against infantry when you upgrade them in Imperial Age, which is something we don't see for Knights. The Wei also have a team bonus for cavalry to deal +2 against siege, though if your melee cavalry is attacking siege, that's probably already going to go well, with or without a bonus. The main time that bonus is particularly nice is when rushing down trebuchets in Imperial. Now, one thing that makes Hei Guang a bit complicated for our purposes here is that all 3 civilizations with access to it are very different thanks to civ bonuses and diverging tech trees. In green, the Shu are an archer civilization, meaning they were naturally given terrible cavalry, missing bloodlines, as well as everything past forging at the blacksmith. The Wu in red are then somewhat generic with full cavalry upgrades, then also adding in an extra +2 attack automatically the moment they hit Imperial Age. You then have the Wei in blue, who have 20% more HP in Castle Age and 30% more in Imperial, while then having a unique tech for +4 melee armor, offset by not having the final blacksmith armor upgrade. In some ways, they seem like the best, and Wei are the cavalry civ of the bunch, though notably in Imperial Age they actually have the lowest pierce armor of this whole group. So I guess the takeaway is we really have to treat these like 3 different units, or maybe even more than 3, as Hei Guang for the Wei in Imperial Age with their low pierce armor actually feel quite different than in Castle Age. So that's a quick rundown, but now let's put it all together, starting with how they simply rank against some different Knights that are already in the game. I tried out a little tournament with all 3 Hei Guang civilizations in Castle Age, along with Knights with and without bloodlines, and I also threw in Teuton Knights, who have +1 melee armor to represent a higher tier. I tried out every combination of those one-on-one, and the hierarchy came out with the Teuton Knights and the Wei's Hei Guang as essentially evenly matched as the best, beating everything else on the list by similar margins, followed by the generic fully upgraded Knight, which as we've already seen is functionally indistinguishable from the Wu's fully upgraded Hei Guang, with the Knights without bloodlines in the next tier down, followed by the Shu, thanks to lacking bloodlines and iron casting in the bottom tier, below any existing Knight in melee, yes, even including Shalota warriors. I got nervous enough I even tested out Shu against fully upgraded light cavalry with balanced resources, just to make sure they'd win, which it turns out they do, though even here I'd say it's closer than you'd probably like. Luckily Shu have a good archery range, their war chariots, and feather guards they can rely on instead, as their Hei Guang are not too impressive. Now while this gives a reasonable snapshot of their melee ability and how they fit into the overall Knight hierarchy, it also hides a bit of an extra weakness. Remember, Hei Guang trade a lot of HP for just a tiny bit of armor, which balanced out fine against Knights, but is a very poor trade against units with a lot of bonus damage, like say Pikemen, who deal so much bonus damage that a tiny bit of extra armor really doesn't move the needle. For example, Shu can only take 3 Pikemen attacks because of their low HP and lack of bloodlines, while Wu and Wei then take 4 hits, even with the Wei's HP bonus on top, which all lags behind the Knight's 5, with or without bloodlines. On the other hand, the Wu and Wei's slightly higher attack means they defeat the Pikemen 1 hit sooner than Knights, though head-to-head against a Pikeman they come out looking quite comparable, though I still think Hei Guang need to be a little extra careful in this matchup. Camels are actually less of a concern since they have smaller bonus damage, so the Hei Guang's extra armor has more impact in a relative sense. In this case, the Wei and a knight with bloodlines are again pretty comparable, but even then, the knight is taking one extra hit. So as soon as even a bit of bonus damage is involved, you get more durability out of the knight's extra HP than the Hei Guang's +2 melee armor. The other situation that the Hei Guang's armor isn't giving you fair compensation for their lower HP is against skirmishers. Whereas a knight takes 100 or 120 javelins depending on if you have bloodlines, even the Wei with their 20% extra HP bonus and bloodlines come in at just 92. And things drop from there with 80 for the Wu and 60 for the Shu. The fact is their extra pierce armor isn't helping, as knights with 2+2 armor already have enough to reduce skirmisher damage to just 1. Things are a little better against crossbows, with Shu still obviously doing the worst, but the Wu and Wei catch up to knights, as in this case the Hei Guang's 1 extra pierce armor does make a significant difference. Now, if we had a unit with 4 base pierce attack landing between an elite skirmisher and crossbow, such as a feudal age Spanish archer with bodkin arrow, we'd see Hei Guang actually do better than knights, as in this case they take just 1 damage instead of the 2 damage of a knight. But unfortunately, the very common elite skirmisher and crossbow in Castle Age just so happen to land on either side of that sweet spot, with 5 and 7 attack after bodkin arrow respectively. We don't have to go through every unit, but the point is in Castle Age, against most things ranged, despite doing it with very different stats, Wei and Wu seem to roughly match a knight in performance, and are generally on pace with them in melee as well. Shu, on the other hand, or maybe I should say other foot, are just a step behind even the weakest of the knight civilizations in some important ways. Next though, let's jump ahead to the Imperial Age. Here, things diverge, not just with each civilization becoming more unique, but we also have a wider range of heavy cavalry units to compare them to, including both cavaliers and paladins, featuring many combinations of upgrades and bonuses. To start with the heavy Hei Guang cavalry upgrade itself, it's pretty cheap at 350 food and 250 gold, almost identical in cost to the cavalier upgrade, giving plus 30 HP, plus 1 attack, and that little bit random plus 1 against infantry I mentioned. The HP improvement in particular is very important, though compared to a cavalier, they still end up with their signature lower HP for higher armor trade-off. Of course, the paladin is then another 2,000-ish resources for another big step up in stats. This is also when the Three Kingdoms civilizations' differences become more stark from each other than ever, with the Shu still languishing without bloodlines and just plus 1 attack from the blacksmith, though an Imperial add in the final armor upgrade. The Wu then flex on the Shu by having not just all of the attack upgrades, but an extra plus 2 attack from a civ bonus, making them the hardest hitting, while the Wei then gain their full plus 30% HP. Plus, remember a unique tech for up to 10 melee armor, though notably Wei have the lowest pierce armor because they're lacking the final armor upgrade. To revisit our rankings relative to the Knightline head-to-head, keep in mind the Hei Guang is actually 10 gold less than a Paladin or Cavalier, and the Wei still managed to land on par with top-tier Paladins like the Franks. The next tier down are then fully upgraded Paladins like Huns and Spanish, followed by a top-tier Cavalier like Malians, closely followed by the Wu's Hei Guang, which are themselves on par with the lowest tier Paladins like Byzantines or Celts. That's followed by generic Cavaliers, such as Chinese, with then lower tier Cavaliers bottoming out at Koreans who lack both Bloodlines and Blast Furnace, with then the old reliable Shu again bringing up the rear. Clearly, if someone asks how good Hei Guang are in Imperial Age, you really need to clarify which civilization they're talking about, as at least in melee, the answer ranges from on par with the best Paladins in the game to below the worst Cavaliers. Also, don't lose sight of how incredible this is for the Wei and Wu, as they're much cheaper to upgrade than the Franks and Byzantines they're matching head to head, and they still save 1,300 resources in upgrade costs compared to their rivals. On the flip side, not to add insult to injury, but the Shu's Hei Guang embarrassingly cost 210 more resources to tech into and fully upgrade than the Korean Cavaliers that beat them. Shu really feel like the punching bag civ in this video. The catch, as you know there has to be one, is that remember Wei are missing the last armor upgrade, so against Arbalesters we see Koreans at just 20 shots, followed up by the Wei at only 28, putting them even behind the Shu for their moment of slight redemption at 30, with then Chinese Cavaliers at 35, Wu at 37, and a proper fully upgraded Paladin blowing them all away with 60 arrows. In a sense, Wu might actually have the most well-rounded Hei Guang in the late game, having the highest attack and greatest resistance of the Three Kingdoms to arrows. Practically speaking though, this isn't that big of an issue for the Wei, as they have Tiger Cavalry available to them at the castle, which have very high pierce armor and a bonus against archers. So between the two units, they end up with their Paladin equivalent in melee, plus a very good answer to archers, just as two separate units. In fact, just a touch on how the Hei Guang fits into all three of the Three Kingdoms civilizations. For Wei, it's a solid knight replacement, being just as good in melee as a top-tier knight or paladin with a lower upgrade and cheaper gold cost. The trade-off is they're a bit weaker to spears and skirmishers in the mid-game, and then much weaker to ranged units in Imperial, albeit with that lower upgrade and gold cost. As for the Wu, you're generally more encouraged into GN swordsmen or infantry with their HP regeneration bonus. But keep in mind, your military buildings as Wu give you back some instant food, which works really nicely for a scout rush. Those stables can easily carry you through into Hei Guang, with them +2 attack and all the upgrades you'd want in Imperial Age. It reminds me a bit of the Goths or Japanese, where they're technically infantry civs, but add in fully upgraded knights as an option. And in this case for Wu, I think Hei Guang become even more useful than either of those knight lines in the late game, as you get the final armor. As for the Shu, they're obviously not looking great throughout the video, landing at the bottom of the melee and range unit tests compared to the knight line. I would note that even without any upgrades, knights and Hei Guang by extension are still dangerous in early Castle Age, and even a handful will easily clean up any leftover Feudal Age units. At the end of the day, anything with stats similar to a knight is going to be decent against a lot of things. Also, while I'm thinking of it, yes, as I'm sure you've noticed in my voice, I'm still getting over a bit of a cold, and I appreciate the nice comments and well wishes some of you left in the last video. I feel like I sound a little better now than I did in that one, partly because of the healing power of cough drops. In fact, I started to go through so many, I realized I should just be making my own and started up a brand new business called Spirit of the Lozenge. It has a great website I set up in minutes thanks to this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a great-looking website, engage with your audience, and then sell anything from products to content to time all in one place. Using either their pre-made templates or Squarespace's AI-enhanced website builder, you can create a fully customized website to suit your needs. It's perfect for building an online presence for a physical business or a store online, using their built-in tools for inventory and shipping with plenty of analytics to give you insights about your website's traffic and sales. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/spiritofthelaw to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So that's a look at the Hei Guang cavalry. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.